So I have another One Piece kind of looking back retrospectively type of a video again. Um, for today. So something that I kind of noticed again, it's like I'm going through and like re-looking at stuff from the anime and the manga and stuff like that, and I'm like noticing things that like that may have occurred to me at one point in time, but now with like more perspective on things, I'm like, huh, if it wasn't for this one character, maybe Luffy wouldn't be where he is now. And so this video is called "Losing and Finding the Sun," and One Piece, blah 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 blah. And it is about like Sun God Nika to a degree, and it is about Luffy and such. And what I wanted to point out is that one of the things that happens is, this is kind of just like a very brief analysis and going over of stuff in regards to from Sabaody when they're all split apart all the way back to when Luffy makes the decision that he's going to train for 2 years. And one of the things that goes on, several of the things that happen with this is, the Straw Hats are all separated at Sabaody by Kuma. Sabaody is getting referenced at the moment a fair amount in regards to what's happening on Egghead and the fact that, we'll see if there's going to end up being another separation with the Straw Hats. Hopefully not, but we'll see how that goes. But there's this, Luffy, all of them get shot all over, get, Kuma bear pod, in every single direction and sent to all these different islands and stuff. Or in Robin's case, a bridge. Usopp's case, a giant carnivorous plant island. But one of the things is of course, Luffy lands on Amazon Lily. And one of the last images that we see of Luffy is, of course, he's trying to run and trying to save any of them that he can get to. And he's, just missing them all by like a hair's breadth as they're all, vanishing in front of him. And of course, he doesn't know where they went. He doesn't know that they're alive even. In his mind, he's just like, I was too weak to save any of them. And we have that where he's just like, head down in the dirt on Sabaody. And, with like Kuma watching over him, and Luffy is just that, he's, that's one of those moments where Luffy kind of breaks because he couldn't save a single one of them. And then Kuma, palms him away, and Luffy, wakes up 3 days later on Amazon Lily. And of course, throughout the cover pages that we get, we know that they're fine, and Luffy kind of deduces a little bit that like, okay, well, I ended up being fine, and Kuma did the same thing to me that he did to the others, and okay, so they're probably okay, they're just on like some island somewhere. And of course, Luffy, goes through Amazon Lily and eventually befriends Hancock and everything and the sisters. And then he ends up, by talking with Grin and Neon, he finds out that, oh, yeah, that's right, Ace is scheduled for execution. And Luffy still has Ace's Viver card, and he, of course, learned from Lola that it's a Viver card, and that as it burns, that means that the person is getting closer to death, that they're getting weaker and weaker. Which, of course, brings up the whole thing of, like, okay, what did the Straw Hat Grand Fleet think as they watched Luffy's Viver card be burning up a whole bunch during that fight with Kaido? That had better be referenced at some point down the line. I really hope so. And what ends up happening is, Luffy, while he's sitting there, looking at the Viver card, he decides that, like, I'm sorry, guys, I have to go try to save my brother. And, he's like, I wasn't strong enough to save you guys, but I have to try. And that's what Luffy does. He gets his way, via Hancock's help, he gets his way to Impel Down. He fights his way through Impel Down, literally fighting through the representations of, like, the different levels of hell from Dante's Inferno and everything, and just going through that. And then, of course, he gets poisoned by Magellan, and then, of course, he gets healed by Ivankov, and then, of course, they fight their way back out, and he finds Jinbei in the process, and, releases all these other prisoners and everything. And then they make their way to Marineford, and they land in the middle of the battle, and Luffy fights his way through the Marines and the Warlords, and the admirals and his own grandfather, all the way up to, where Ace is. And it's not that he's doing it alone. It's, he has, the Whitebeard pirates are there helping. He's got the prisoners from Impel Down that are helping, and Buggy and Jimbei and everything. And Hancock is helping too, subtly. And Ivankov and all of them are all helping him. And he fights his way through, and he's the one that gets to Ace. Yes, he has Galdino's help in regards to getting Ace out of the cuffs, which is good. And, he gets Ace, and, we watch this entire thing, these last, Impel Down all the way through the Marineford at this point in time. We've watched these arcs as Luffy is fighting his way to his brother. And, you're rooting for him the entire way through. When you're reading the manga, if you don't read the manga and you just watch the anime, you're rooting for him the entire way through. And he gets Ace freed. And they're, and they get past the Marines, and we get a couple of moments where they're fighting together as brothers and everything. And they can leave. And then Ace turns back because Akainu insulted Whitebeard. And I understand Ace wanting to, defend Whitebeard's honor and everything. I understand that, but and it's not just Luffy, Whitebeard and them and the Whitebeard pirates and the allies, they showed up to save Ace as well. And Ace, Ace even has a line where he's just I just started wanting to live with seeing all of them there. He didn't want them to save him. He didn't think that they would show up to save him, because Ace has always disregarded his own life value and everything. He's almost always done that. And he found a reason to live in regards to wanting to protect Luffy, so Luffy can get stronger, and then blah, blah, blah. And then, wanting to have, help make Whitebeard the Pirate King, even though that wasn't what Whitebeard wanted. Whitebeard probably knows where the One Piece is anyway, and he's just, he just didn't care. That wasn't his dream. His dream was to make a family. And to act, I guess, somewhat as a gatekeeper for whoever would be the next one. Who would ever be the next Roger, the next Joy Boy at that point in time. I wonder if Whitebeard ever would have been considered for the, that title of Joy Boy. I wonder if there would have been any moments where he would have qualified for that. That's a different video concept. Probably not a me video, though, but somebody else video. And it's a possibility. But we, and Ace ends up, saving Luffy by jumping in front of Akainu and taking the attack that was meant for Luffy. And, in that moment, you just see Luffy start to break. And he ends up broken by the end of that with, Ace dying in Luffy's arms. And, Luffy just goes comatose at that point in time, and subsides to his own injuries and everything like that have happened because of the poison, and so many other things that have happened, and the backlash of all the hormones that Ivankov put in him to heal him and give him energy and everything. And it's just all of that clashes at that point in time when Luffy just breaks. And, between Marco and Jimbei and the Whitebeard pirates, they're just Luffy's Ace's brother, so he's kind of our brother too, so we're going to get him out of here, and we're going to get him to safety and everything. We can't do anything for Ace anymore except this. So they get, the Whitebeard pirates that are there, with Whitebeard dying and everything that happens with Blackbeard and all of that. They get, Marco and the others, they get Luffy out of there. Jimbei and, Buggy and everything help to get Luffy to, Law's submarine, who miraculously shows up there. And, they get him there, and Shanks shows up and stops the war. And when Luffy wakes up again after, I don't remember exactly if we get how many days it is that he was unconscious, Law was treating him and stuff like that. It's probably at least a couple of days, given the fact that they are back at Amazon Lily at this point in time. And Luffy is running around the island and just causing a bunch of damage to not just the island, and the fact that he's destroying trees and running into boulders and cliffs and stuff like that. he's, you know, Law makes a comment of like, if he keeps doing that, he's going to reopen his wounds, and I can only do so much if that's what he keeps doing. And Jinbei is the one that's there. And this is where I'm getting into all of that leading up to that moment where Ace is gone is Luffy losing the sun. I think we see him use his powers a little bit during this time frame when he's like destroying rocks and stuff like that, but Luffy's obviously not at full health. And he's physically in a lot of pain, and he's also in this mental anguish about what happened with Ace. And I think it started out for Luffy as like he's trying to, you know, it's like you pinch yourself to wake up from a dream and everything. And Luffy, you know, he makes the comment to Jinbei that's just like, I know that this is not a dream. If this was a dream, I would have woken up already. I know that Ace is gone. You don't need to tell me that. And, you know, Luffy's remembering what happened at Marineford and everything, and he, you know, he knows Ace is gone. He knows Ace can't come back. And at this point in time, you know, in this time frame is when we get the whole flashback to, you know, when, you know, the Goa Island Kingdom flashback and everything, where we get to see Luffy and Ace as kids, and we get to meet Sabo, and we get to see all of that. And, you know, and we, you know, learned that, you know, there were 3 of them, and then they thought Sabo died, and then it was just Ace and Luffy, and they kept pushing each other to get stronger and stronger in Goa as they trained. And then, you know, Ace went off, and then Luffy kept training, and then he headed off. And then at this point in time, Luffy thinks he's the last one left. He thinks that you know, Sabo died when they were kids 10 some years ago. Ace is now dead. Luffy's the last one in his mind, because he, of course, does not know that Sabo is still alive, and we as the audience don't know that Sabo is still alive at this point in time. But, you know, because there's that whole thing. And I know a lot of people may not necessarily care for Sabo, and I know some people didn't necessarily care for Ace to a degree. That's your opinion. That's perfectly fine. Not every single character in a story is designed to be liked by everybody. Trust me. But I liked Ace, and I like Sabo. And, you know, I get what Oda's going at with some of that stuff, but one of the things that happens is, you know, Luffy is just causing, you know, more physical injury to himself with the way that he's, you know, abusing his body, and the fact that he keeps, you know, running into the trees and rocks and stuff like that. And, like, Jinbei keeps trying to stop him, and, like, Luffy bites Jinbei at one point in time. And then there's a moment where Jinbei just pins Luffy to the rock. And Luffy's just, like, struggling still, but Jinbei has him pinned. And he's, you know, Jinbei is saying, you know, it's like, your pain may be great, but it mustn't devour you. There is yet joy beyond your sorrows. What's gone may be gone, but you still have something left in this world to treasure, don't you? And I always, when I read the manga of that part for the first time, when I saw that part in the anime for the first time, I don't remember which one I read or saw first, because I went on and off on One Piece for a while. And I don't remember which one of those I interacted with this moment first, if I read it first or if I watched it in the anime. I don't remember. All kind of jumbles together. And Luffy, you know, I always saw that as a very impactful moment, because Luffy has spent the last 3 arcs without his crew, and he saw them all get, you know, Kumapawed away, and then he spent, you know, the next however many, you know, days or whatever trying to get to Ace and trying to save Ace, and he succeeded, and then it got ripped away from him right in front of him, and Ace died in his arms. And Luffy is at the moment where he is just like, how can I protect anything anymore at this point in time? How can I protect my crew if I couldn't even protect my own brother? You know, Luffy is at the moment where he is at his lowest. And there's actually, like, this representation of, like, these, you inside of Luffy's mind, like this darkness encroaching around him. And I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a reference to depression. And I've lost a lot of family members in my life, two of them to suicide, and others to heart attacks or strokes, to dying of old age, to, other things, to, Rainy very recently for different reasons. It hurts when you lose people you love. And no, Luffy is not the first one out of the Straw Hats at all to lose someone that they love, and the fact that almost all of them have lost someone that they love within their flashbacks and, within their backstories and everything. That they've all lost someone. And we don't learn until later, way back, once we get to Fishman Island, we don't learn about Jinbei's past a whole lot. We know that he was a warlord and everything, but we don't learn about his past with Fisher Tiger until then, with Fisher Tiger and Otohime. And how he watched Fisher Tiger die, this man that he admired. And then several years later, he watches as Queen Otohime dies. And he's unable to do anything about that as well. And in this moment, he's seeing Luffy at his lowest. He is seeing this broken Luffy in front of him. And he's remembering when him and Ace were in the cell, and Ace is like, if I don't make it out of this, Jinbei, will you watch over my brother? Will you keep him safe? And, I don't remember if we ever get the answer as if Jinbei agreed to that or not, but clearly at that moment he is agreeing to. And he's trying to snap Luffy out of this depression. And I know that it's not always an easy thing to snap people out of depression. I've had family members and friends and other people that I've known that deal with depression on many different levels. I've dealt with depression on many different levels. Nothing to the point where I've ever wanted to go too far with anything, but still, everybody has felt those moments in their lives. And Jinbei doesn't want to see Luffy broken anymore, and he wants to try to remind Luffy, it's just like Luffy is in like the bottom of this dark pit and he needs something to help light it up. And that's what Jinbei is trying to do. He is trying to help Luffy understand, or help remind him that you have other things out there, other people out there that you care for. And Luffy, he kind of stops struggling at that point in time. And Jinbei lets him go, and Luffy just slides to the ground. And he's, like, sitting there. And he's just, like, quiet for a moment while he's thinking. And then he starts counting on his fingers. And remembering all of his crew. Little bitty flashbacks that we're getting of him just, like, probably things that Luffy probably did a lot. Is just, like, pop around the ship and see what everybody's up to. Just because that just seems like something that Luffy would do. Like, pop in on Zoro while he's training. Nami telling him what to do if there's a storm coming. Pop in on Usopp while Usopp's fishing and telling this funny story. Pop in on, Sanji while he's cooking. Pop in on, Chopper while he has to get a shot. Pop in, see what Robin's reading about. Go and check on Frankie down in the, in the cola room. Get woken up by Brook and getting a song and all this other stuff. And, that's a reference back to, just like moments that we don't see that much with the crew, or just like them relaxing and having fun on the ship and between their huge adventures. And that's just like a callback to that, where just like everyday stuff that they do that we get glimpses of, but not a huge amount. And Luffy is just like, he's like sitting there and there's tears, running down his face again. And he was already crying and everything from like, when he's shouting about the fact that he knows that Ace is dead. And he's just like, my crew, I have my Nakama, I still have them. And that was always just one of those other big impactful moments to me. And Luffy is just sitting there, and it's just like, there's this moment, and he just kind of like curls in on himself again, because like, as he was like thinking of all of them, we get the representation of like the darkness receding, pulling away from him. And, this, cracks appearing and letting in the light, letting in the sun again. And, you know, Luffy is just like, I want to see my crew again. I want to see them again. And Jinbei just kind of smiles at that. And Luffy's like, I'm already late for meeting them again. I said 3 days, and I'm too late for that. And, you know, within that time frame, you know, back out on the rest of what's going on Amazon Lily at this point in time, that's when, you know, Rayleigh has shown up and, you know, kind of like sends Law and his crew off. And, you know, when Luffy and Jinbei return to the coast, you know, Law's already gone, so Luffy doesn't get the chance to thank him, which I think Luffy probably would have thanked Law at that point in time if, you know, if Law had stuck around. And, you know, they see Rayleigh and Luffy gets his hat back and Luffy's kind of like smiling again. And, you know, Rayleigh is, yes, the one that kind of comes up with the plan of, you know, the picture in the newspaper and the 3D, 2Y and all of that. But Luffy takes him up on the offer of being trained. And it's, you know, it's being trained by the man who was the right-hand man to the king of the pirates. It's going to be 2 years. You're going to be on this island, you know, all of this other stuff. And, you know, Luffy, you know, uses the 3D, 2Y and everything like that to get the message to his crew in the newspaper. And all of them get a fire lit inside of them as well, because they're just like, I'm going to train. Zoro's like, he goes and he, you know, puts his own pride aside to ask Mihawk to train him. Nami is just like, I'm going to spend the next 2 years here with all these really strange weather wizards and just get stronger and learn everything that they can and make my climb attack even better. Usopp is like, okay, forget all this eating I've been doing. I need to get to where I need to train. And then he learns all about the different pop greens and everything from Heracles. And Sanji is just like, his version is spending like 2 years on Kamabaka and everything. And being chased around, which I still find hilarious. So there's that. And we have, you know, and then like Chopper spends, you know, the 2 years on, you know, the Torino Kingdom and learning more about medicine and everything like that, and helping actually make their island a little bit better with them and the birds now, you know, being in, you know, harmony. And, you know, so there's that. And then you have Robin, who, you know, helped free the people of To Kill a Wolf, and then, you know, she spends the next 2 years with the Revolutionary Army and gets to know Sabo and Hack and Koala, and, you know, probably meets Dragon at some point in time in that regard. She spends that time there. And then, you know, then we get to, you know, Frankie, you know, spends the 2-ish years in, you know, on Karakura Island in Vegapunk's lab, where he just like upgrades himself and gets stuff ready for the Sunny and does all of that. And then, you know, Brooke spends 2 years becoming a rock star, but also just, you know, even training more with his soul powers and his sword and getting even stronger that way. And so we see that, and it's just like they all got this fire lit under them because they saw, you know, they read in the newspaper about what happened with Luffy, and they're just like, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm not going to let my captain go through that hell again if I can stop it. And they all take it, and, you know, we know that, you know, the 2 years later, they're all so much stronger by the time they're all reunited. And, you know, I got another thing to put on with that one, but they're all just, like, so much stronger by the time they're all reunited. Just, like, I don't know if I would say that by the time they all meet up again that they're all stronger than, like, pre-time skip Luffy was, but definitely a bunch of them have surpassed where pre-time skip Luffy was at that point in time. And, you know, not just their physical strength have gotten better and their powers and stuff like that, but also their knowledge in regards to how they can help Luffy, in regards to Chopper with his medical knowledge and Sanji with the cooking, which we don't really get to see him utilize that much with what he learns on Kamabaka, but still Nami with, you know, learning so much about the weather that she can use for, like, helping navigate them, and, you know, you know, all this other stuff, like how they've gotten so much stronger. And yes, Luffy spends the 2 years on Ruskaida training with Rayleigh and everything. And, you know, there's this moment where, and I think it's a callback to something that we see, and I don't remember if this is in the manga itself or it's just something that they put in the anime, but it's okay. It's like filler I'm okay with. there's a moment where Luffy's getting ready to go off to start training in the jungles of Ruscaino with Rayleigh. And there's like this ghostly image of Ace that kind of shows up behind him and like pushes him to like, pushes him to keep going. It's just like, go. You're going to be fine. Keep going. And, Luffy trains and trains and trains and gets stronger, and he is able to, train himself into Bounce Man and all this other stuff with learning how to use, how to, maximize his devil fruit to the best of his ability at that point in time. And he trains and trains and trains. And, then, once they're all reunited and everything, then everything happens in Fishman Island, and Luffy has, bleeds to death because of Hody, and then he has to get the blood transfusion from Jinbei, which is just fun to deal with. And we have this moment where we just see like the relief of his crew's face as they're just like, okay, Luffy's okay. Just like we spent the last 2 years getting stronger to protect our idiot captain. And we got stronger, and we proved that during, this fight, which for most of them wasn't really that hard of a fight, in how, in dealing with, the Hody pirates or whatever they were called. Dealing with them wasn't, for the most part, wasn't that hard for them. And the only reason it had an issue with Luffy was just because, like, he was having to deal with fighting Hody underwater and, that type of stuff. And also, piercing attacks are much harder for Luffy to deal with, of course, than blunt force attacks. So there's, that moment there. Also, Luffy is, like, doesn't sure if he should destroy the Noah or not. And he's told, yeah, just destroy it. It's fine. Everything that happens there, and he's trying to protect Shirahoshi during that battle and all that other stuff. But, Jinbei is the one that, gives him the blood transfusion, so Luffy's able to be okay. And, of course, Luffy asks Jinbei to join the crew, and eventually, with everything that happens in Totland, Jinbei is now part of the crew, but then he's separated from them again. And then, they're all back together in, Wano at that point, later on. And then, of course, we have in Wano where it is revealed about Luffy, what Luffy's devil fruit actually is. That it's actually, it's still the Gomu Gomu no Mi, but in reality, it's actually the Hito Hito no Mi mythical zone model sun god Nika. And there's that whole realization where it's just like, yes, if Luffy hadn't spent that time training and then like had to deal with all these other powerful opponents in regards to, Doflamingo and Katakuri and dealing with Big Mom to a degree, and then fighting Kaido and everything and training and everything in Udon and meeting Hirogoro and everything, all of that would have been for naught had Jinbei not been the one to snap him out of that. Had Jinbei not been the one to make Luffy stop and realize that he's just hurting himself and that he needs to focus and remember that he's not alone, that he still has his crew. Even if you're all separated, you still have your crew. And that, that Nika, Luffy turning into Nika may not exist without Jinbei doing that in the first place. Because Luffy got knocked down so many times by Kaido in that fight and in Wano itself. And he just kept getting back up. As soon as he could, he kept getting back up again. And then that is what leads into him becoming Nika. Awakening that power fully. And being able to use it and then defeating Kaido. And it's, I look at, this whole thing of just like Luffy goes through everything to save Ace, and Luffy gets all the way to his lowest point. Where, yes, Luffy was devastated when they lost Sabo as well. But now Luffy is just like, in his mind, he thinks he's alone. And yes, he finds out at Dressrosa that Sabo is still alive, that he's not alone, that, he's not the only one carrying on Ace as well. And then, of course, there's other moments when he gets to Wano and he meets Tama, and then he finds out that Tama knew Ace. And, then later he learns that Yamato knew Ace, and he's just like, we still get this moment where, like, Luffy still sometimes doesn't want to talk about Ace. And we see that in regards to how he deals with Tama at first, where he doesn't reveal, he's like, he reveals that Ace is dead, but he doesn't reveal that he is Ace's younger brother. And Tama doesn't find out about that until they're running through the battle of Onigashima, and she's talking to Nami and Usopp, and she gets that explained to her. And, we see so much of that. And Luffy, no, you never get over the loss of someone that you love. I can attest to that. My mom can attest to that. Other people I know, and just anyone in the world can tell you that you never really get over losing someone that you love. Yes, it can become less painful. Yes, it can become easier to talk about, but it never goes away. And Luffy losing Ace is never going to go away. That's always going to be a part of him. That's always going to be a part of his story and a part of who he is and a part of who Sabo is. But it's also because of Jinbei pulling him out of that he was able to then become even stronger and go even further and carry on just more of, to a degree, Ace's will at that point in time. And that also lives on in Sabo and stuff. And in Tama, and in Yamato, and in the Whitebeard Pirates as well, for, the former members of that. And how that just, that keeps perpetuating. And Luffy is just like, I'm going to keep going. And he does. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a call back to that moment with Jinbei again. I would like it if we did. That would be a nice thing to do, or it's like in the canon of the story if that happens. I know the anime does like callbacks to it occasionally when they're trying to do like sum up stuff that happens, in previous arcs and stuff like that. Well, they'll do like a bit of a summation episode and stuff like that. Or they're reminding you of who the characters were, like what happened in Reverie and everything when they were reintroducing, stuff with Vivi and Dalton and Wapol and everything. But in canon, in like something that Luffy and Jinbei talk about, or something that Jinbei talks about with someone in the crew, that moment there is going to be kind of interesting to see if they ever bring it back. If Oda ever is just like, you know what? I'm going to reference that again. And like just remind like how far Luffy fell, but then like how much further he's come and how much more he rose up to like meet the challenges that were coming his way, to meet his dream, to achieve his dream, and all of that. And I wanted to do a video about that. I thought about it a little while ago when I was looking at stuff, and I'm like, I want to talk about that. And now I have, and I'm glad I did. So that's what we have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't really know what I'm going to do for a video next week in regards to a One Piece or a My Hero video. It depends on whatever else happens this week in regards to stuff. I do have another One Piece Disney video that I'm kind of thinking of. But that'll be for maybe next week, maybe another time. We'll see. But that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.